Thank you again for joining us today. Welcome to another edition of our Brainy Boomer lecture series. First, we would like to begin by acknowledging that the McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kenyan Kehaka Nation is recognized as the custodian of the lands on waters on which we gather today. Geojiaque, commonly known as Montreal, is historically known as the gathering place for many Indigenous peoples. Today, it continues to be the home of a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples we serve within the Montreal community and at large. In 2007, the McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging Education Committee began the Brainy Boomer lecture series to suggest practical steps to both improve and maintain brain health, as well as to promote healthy lifestyle choices amongst the most populous generation in history. The MCSA Education Committee, founded in 1996, has three objectives. One, identifying education needs of healthcare providers, seniors, caregivers, the public, and developing responses to meet these needs. Two, enhancing the positive image of successful aging by addressing stereotypes, myths, paradigms, and the dissemination of research on successful aging. Today's guest is Mr. Matt Del Vecchio, and he is going to be discussing aging in place and transition trends. Thank you, Mr. Del Vecchio, for joining us today, and we look forward to have our audience send you questions after the lecture.
Thank you very much for having me. Really honored to speak to everyone. Wonderful turnout. That's so nice to see. And I appreciate taking a little time here to hear about aging in place and transition trends. So as you see on the screen there, I won't get into all the details, but some of you may know me from CJAD. I have a show called Life Unrehearsed. And it's been 8 years running now. I'm off for the summer back in September. And I also own Liana Senior Transition Support, which is a service that helps families find and do the search for retirement homes and long-term care homes. It's actually a free service offered to families. And Premier Home Care, which is aging in place if you needed some additional home care at home. That's what that is. I am a certified professional consulting on aging, and some of you may read my articles in The Suburban. I'm their seniors and aging columnist. I have a column once a month on the topic of seniors and aging. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for joining me. And then, as Alexander mentioned, we'll have some Q&A afterwards. And please feel free to put that in the chat box. If you're not comfortable in the chat box, then there will be time to ask at the end. But always best for Alexander to read through the questions while it's in the chat box. All right. As mentioned, I do have the show on CJAD, and I bring up this topic of aging in place and transition trends quite a bit. And for whatever reason, call-ins and questions really go up when I talk about this subject. And so I've turned it into kind of a webinar series. So you're going to get, I guess, some experiences from the many, many years of doing this. And hopefully you'll be able to get a couple of hints and tips as we go through here. So some of the discussion points today are, we're going to talk about our aging population in Canada and quite frankly, right around the world, how to effectively age in place, some of the transition trends that are ongoing. What's the difference? I get a lot of questions about what's the difference between public and private, whether it's home care or whether it's in residences. So I'm going to describe that, put out costs, so for budgeting purposes, just to have an idea of what's out there. And then we'll open it up to some Q&A afterwards. All right. We all know the population is aging. In fact, the next 20 years, we'll see the fastest growth of our population aged 65 and over. In fact, that number is about 50%. In the next 20 years, those people, our population over 65, it's a 50% increase. What's interesting, the next 20 years after that, it's only about a 9% increase. So really, we're in the crunch. The boomers are reaching that age over 65 and big increases, which is part of the issue while we see the challenges with the healthcare system. What do? I get this question all the time. Do we age in place or do we downsize? And I'm going to talk about both here. How can we effectively age in place? Well, we certainly want to enjoy our home as long as possible. In fact, when doing surveys, Stats Canada, which was 95% of the population want to age at home as long as possible. But in order to do that, things have to come in place. When we're younger, where everything's fine, but as we age, we need to start putting things in place to help us live at home longer. Simple things, for example, housekeeping. And it's very difficult to get a house cleaner these days because it's a service that's being asked by a lot of people now. Things like landscaping and snow removal are able to help out, so you don't have to do it on your own. Obviously, the home maintenance and repairs are getting popular. And even now, since the pandemic, we're seeing a real surge in delivery of groceries. Some of you maybe even have your medications from the pharmacy being delivered as well. These are simple services that are being added to help us stay at home longer. We also want to be able to create a safe and secure environment. And what I mean by that, we could make some home modifications. There are simple ones, some inexpensive options. I'm going to talk about this in more detail in the next couple of screens. Or we can start doing some renovations and major work. For example, I would consider having to put a ramp either on the outside of the home if someone's in a wheelchair. That is a big renovation. To redo the bathroom, maybe get rid of the bathtub and put in a walk-in shower. Those are major renovations as examples that are being done to help us live at home. We work with a lot of clients in a cottage, 2 stories, 3 stories, but as mobility becomes an issue, we've even had some couples where they're making their main area on one floor so that the bathroom is on the same floor. They don't have to navigate stairs. Those are big renovations. So there's some big stuff we could do and some simple ones that we could do that I'm going to talk about. I always like suggesting, and it's worth the investment, there are occupational therapists that do these home assessments. They'll go through your home and they'll go everything from bathroom, bedrooms, indoors, outdoors, and give a really good assessment and give some recommendations to help you age in place. So we always recommend to hire an occupational therapist. Now, we talked about some of these more simpler modifications that can be done. The biggest chance for slips and falls is going to be in the bathrooms, number one. And so you see in the top left-hand corner, grab bars. So it's always a great idea to put in some grab bars. I just want to reinforce that a towel holder is not a grab bar, okay? It's very different. And sometimes we may tend to grab that towel bar to hold on. They're not screwed into the main parts of the wall and behind those tiles. So grab bars are a great way for a safer and secure environment in the bathroom. On the top middle, I see a little nightlight. This is just a simple little investment to put it in the hallways in your bedroom. Let's face it, many of us have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and but a lot of the falls happen when it's too dark. So lighting is actually crucial. We recommend the use of these night lights as well. And talking about lights, an investment in brighter lights throughout the condo or the home that you're living in is always worth a good investment, particularly if there's some eyesight issues like macular degeneration. Lighting is important. On the top right, we see these mats, and many people have them. We prefer, or we suggest, to remove them completely. You tend to get those rabbit ears at the end of the mats and pull rugs. They're not recommended, but for aesthetic reasons and for also comfort reasons, they're quite popular. So if you are going to have them and insist on having them, nice. There's double-sided tape. It's a very simple investment that you could do to make sure from end to end those rugs and mats are going to be really adhered to the floor and less chance of slipping. Also popular is these what we call shower benches. If you have a bathtub, you don't want to do that investment of getting in a walk-in shower, which is understandable. These transfer benches or shower benches are getting very popular, again, reducing the risk of slips and falls. Hand railings are getting popular, particularly with mobility issues that will help you stay at home a little longer. Get those hand railings in and use them to your advantage. We're even seeing them on both sides. If you have a stairwell that have walls on both sides, always recommend it for some hand railings. And raised toilet seats is another popular one, just helping you transfer when you're in the washroom, and they're getting quite popular. A lot of this stuff is available at local medical equipment stores, and you can get that. Sometimes the CLSC will provide these things as well. Now, these are modifications that we just talked about. But we also, in order to age in place, we also have to have the ability to provide proper care. Now I'm referring more to the caregivers. Okay, this could be a spouse, this could be an adult daughter or an adult son. We also have to be able to have that ability to provide proper care. And what I mean by that is family. Do you have family around that can chip in to help out? Do you have access to the CLSC to get some services at home? We're going to talk more about the CLSC in a second. Um, and do you have the financial ability? If you're not getting enough CLSC services, or if you don't have the family, can you bring in some private home care? That's what Premier Home Care does. We have a lot of caregivers in homes providing private home care. However, not affordable for some people, which is completely understandable. And caregiver support, probably the most important issue, caregiver support. You know, it's the old in the airplane, the oxygen mask on yourself before your children. It's the same thing for your spouse. You need to be able to take care of yourself. 1 in 4 Canadians are in the role of caregiver. Most of the time, you have not been educated properly to be a caregiver. Why? Because you kind of just were thrown into that role. It's understandable. So, no formal training, kind of winging it, kind of doing what you can because of your loved one. You're doing your best, but you also need some support for yourself. So take care of yourself as well, because the worst thing that could happen for a caregiver is they get sick. And now it's even more trouble because now you have two people that are of a concern. So let's go to the CLSC. How to access. This is a public service offered by the government. There are pros and cons to the CLSC. Many people listening today may be getting some CLSC services. Some may be struggling to try to get CLSC services. Not easy, but the only way to get public home care services is through the CLSC. And typically, CLSC service will do some of the following tasks: bathing, usually weekly. Medication management, this is more for people that are having difficulty, more cognitive challenges, that are difficulty taking their pills at the right time and in the right quantities. So medication management is sometimes provided by the CLSC. They'll come in a couple times a day for that. Sometimes they'll help with morning prep and evening preparation as well. So those are some of the more common ones for home care. I want to bring everyone's attention to something called Chèque Emploi Service. Some people aren't aware of this. It will vary by different CLSCs because of budget and so on. However, in principle, the government has recognized that they just don't have enough staff and resources to be able to provide public home care service to everyone. And so there's a program called Chèque Emploi Service. And it's the same thing. If you want to get any home care services, there still has to be an evaluation done by someone at the CLSC that will actually evaluate your situation at home. If they don't have the staff, Chèque Emploi Service assigns an X amount of hours, and you will be able to hire your own caregiver, and the government pays today it's 1948, $19.48 for the number of hours that are allocated to you. So if you get 10 hours a week, the government, now there's some paperwork for you to fill out. You hire your caregiver, and the government will pay those 10 hours at 1948. So I want you to be aware of Chèque Emploi Service. Not easy to get. Okay, there's a lot of things that go into it, but there will be an evaluation. I want you, as those that are listening, that are on the call, to know that this service does exist. They're cutting back big time on it. Okay, but some people aren't even aware it exists. So this is why I'm mentioning it to you. Now, that was the public. If you want to access private home care, there are many options. Premier Home Care is one of many private home care companies that are out there throughout Greater Montreal and throughout Quebec, and quite frankly, the rest of Canada. Private home care, you should expect certain daily and weekly minimums. Okay, there's a certain amount of hours per day and a certain minimum of hours per week that is usually required with private home care. The one big benefit that I hear and feedback from clients is that we're very proud to provide consistent caregivers, and this will be a big difference from CLSC services, especially if you have a spouse with dementia or cognitive challenges, because it's important to have consistent caregivers. Unfortunately, with the CLSC, there's such high turnover. There's different people coming in and out. So private home care companies will give the ability to have consistent caregivers. Quite important. In terms of costs, the going rate in Montreal is somewhere between $36 to $40 per hour is your expected cost. There are some government credits. I'm going to talk about that in a second here. So the government has increased the percentage of the tax credits that's going to families. So in 2025, under that column, it's 39%. So what happens is if you're hiring a private home care company, that company will issue a formal receipt. That receipt is submitted to the government and they will kick back 39%. So it's not, small dollars. There's a good chunk, 39%, that will be given back, literally a deposit, either into the bank account or filled out on your annual taxes. Yes, there are certain minimums based on income that you're bringing in, and there are certain maximums, but I need you to be aware there's some pretty substantial tax credits available for those that are going the route of private home care. Now, why are some people saying, you know what, we've made a go of it. We're aging at home as best we can. Some fantastic can go right to end of life. Others are saying, you know what, maybe it's time to downsize. Here are the biggest reasons what we're hearing why people are downsizing. First and foremost, it could be for physical nature. Okay, so stairs are becoming difficult to navigate. Going in and out of the shower and bathtub, some slips and falls happening. So we see physical reasons as being one of those reasons why people are downsizing. At the other end of the spectrum is for cognitive reasons. Perhaps there's some early onset dementia, perhaps there's heavier dementia or dementia diseases like Alzheimer's or Lewy body or Parkinson's starting to increase. So one of the reasons is increased cognitive abilities. It makes it difficult to live at home. Caregiver stress, we just talked about that. That's a big reason. You're doing your best, superhero, literally superhero work, but sometimes it just becomes too much, and need to figure out a plan to transition from home. Safety and security, that could be for physical reasons, also cognitive. For example, if someone's a flight risk or a wanderer at home, we're seeing a lot of that on the news. So there's another reason why people are considering to move. Loneliness, perhaps there's been a loss of a spouse. One of the biggest reasons I see is the burden of home ownership. It's just becoming too much at home. Roof repairs, things are leaking. It's just becoming too much to live at home. So we're seeing a lot of that as why people are downsizing. All right, so
Yeah.
burden of home ownership, a big reason why people are transitioning. Okay, so now we've aged in place. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it's time to move. The big question I get is, okay, where do we go? And what we're seeing is there's really three types of scenarios. Downsize from your home into either a smaller home or a townhouse. That's one option. It's actually an option that's we don't think is recommended because townhouses, for example, by nature are higher. There's more vertical. You actually have more stairs in many townhouses. So if there are mobility issues, we don't recommend that. We're seeing a lot more of the following: downsizing to a condominium, or now we've got these so-called apartments, 55 and up. So similar, they'll have a couple of common areas, maybe a gym or a pool, not necessarily services of a retirement home, but we're seeing a lot of people downsizing to one. You have no more stairs, there will be elevators, and that's a popular way to go. Many people are just going right into a nice retirement home or a senior's residence. I'm going to talk more about that. And for higher cares, than transitioning from home directly into a public CHSLD, or what we know as a nursing home. So I wanted to give some definitions. We hear on the radio or even on my show, RPAs, CHSLDs, there's different acronyms. So a retirement home is an RPA. It's referred to as an RPA. That's just a French acronym for uh, Résidence Privée pour Aînés, RPA, retirement home. So there are basically three types of retirement homes. There's independent living. So essentially, you're in a retirement home. You'll have your own apartment, a one bedroom or a two bedroom with your own kitchen. You could have your washer and dryer there. Basically, just like condo living. However, it will be in a retirement home where there will be things like a dining room, a nurse on staff. You can get services. In all likelihood, there may be dépanneurs and pharmacies, and certainly lots of activities going on. So that's independent living. Assisted living, and many retirement homes have both independent living or an assisted living floor. Assisted living will be where you're getting more services. Usually you're getting your meals included. You get your laundry included, your housekeeping included. If you need some care, for example, like bathing or assistance with dressing, assisted living is that. And memory care could also be in an assisted living environment, but with staff that understands memory issues like dementia and dementia diseases like Alzheimer's, as we've talked about, versus a CHSLD, okay, a nursing home. Centre d'hébergement de soins de longue durée. That's CHSLD, another acronym. General rule of thumb, if you require more than 3 hours of daily services, you're having difficulty transferring from bed, if there's full incontinence, maybe in a wheelchair, can't feed yourself, now we're in that nursing home CHSLD category. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those. Some of the benefits that we get from our surveys and in talking to a lot of people, probably the number one benefit of a retirement home are the social benefits. Okay, you can stay in your apartment as long as you want, but generally there's activities. You don't have to participate in all the activities, but there are some that you can, that you like. Tons of activities in some of the better retirement homes. Obviously, healthy living and getting proper care. Most people want to go into independent living, but know that down the road, if they need more care, it's there. They don't have to move again. Okay, so that's quite popular. Atmosphere and environment. There's a big reason for that. And we always recommend, just going for a lunch. Usually it's complimentary lunch. You get to test the food. You get to see who's there. You get to see, is it people like yourselves? Do you feel comfortable in that environment? So a big part of the retirement homes, yeah, you know what? It's people just like me. Safety and security. Obviously, you've got reception areas. There's, anything. If you're in a regular condo or an apartment, there may be some fire and safety issues that aren't as much that you would have in a retirement home. So safety and security is important. And we go back to that same one, ending the burden of home ownership. There's an issue in a retirement home. It's the maintenance person that's got to take care of it. Something is a problem in your apartment. They're going to take care of it. You don't have to worry about that roof leaking, or the pipes leaking, or something wrong with the shower. Okay, that's a big reason I hear why people are in retirement homes. Now, what does it cost? I get this all the time. I'm going to give some ballpark costs. You're going to see a wide range, and I'm going to explain why we have a wide range. Independent living that I was talking about, plan on somewhere between $1,500 to $3,500 per month in an independent living RPA, a retirement home. Okay, so you're going to have the dining room and the nursing services. The reason why there's a big discrepancy, the three biggest costs in a retirement home is, one is going to be the size of the apartment. Is it a studio? Is it a one bedroom? Is it a two bedroom? Every time you bump up a room, you're adding $700 to $800 per month to the cost. Okay. Meals. You don't have to take any meals in independent living, but if you want to add meals, sometimes you can add a meal a day, for example. Sometimes that's recommended, one for nutritional value, but also gets you out of the apartment as well. So that's quite popular. And if you want services like parking or housekeeping, that's why you're going to get that range of around $1,500 to $3,500. Assisted living, somewhere in the range of 4 to 6. There will be some that are a little more than that. However, why is it more expensive? Because you're going to get your meals automatically included. You're going to get your housekeeping laundry, some care services like weekly bathing or medication management. Usually that's included in assisted living. Some, not all of them, but most of the time, yes. So that's why it's more expensive. And then once we get into memory care and long-term care more than 3 hours, there's more labor involved. Now we get a big discrepancy, anywhere from 5,000 to 12,000 per month. This is in the private sector, okay? I'm going to bring up some public sector costs in just a moment. Know that in the private sector, there are also tax credits for retirement homes. I talked about those tax credits for if you get home care. Well, there's also tax credits in retirement homes. It works out somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% of what you'll get back on a monthly basis. Okay, so I'm just going to pick for hypotheticals. Let's say it's $3,000 per month. You're probably going to get back around between $400 and $450 back from the provincial government, literally a deposit into your account. Why is the government doing this? By the way, we're the only province in Canada with this. There are more Quebecers on a per capita basis in retirement residences than anywhere else in the country. And a big part of that reason is because the government is doing some subsidizing. It's not a heck of a lot, 10 to 15%, but it's much more than what the other provinces are doing. Okay. By the way, the retirement home will fill out the paperwork for this tax credit for you. Other things to consider when you're if and when you want to downsize, no more property and school and water taxes that you're paying at home. Forget about the utilities. Hydro and gas is always included in rents at retirement homes. Cable, phone, and internet. More and more retirement homes are including that. Not all, but more are. Home maintenance. Well, you don't have to deal with any home maintenance repairs anymore. And if you've got like ADT security service at home, you don't have to pay for that. Groceries and meals may depend if you're getting meals at the residence or not. Housekeeping and laundry are usually less expensive at the retirement home because they have staff going from apartment to apartment. So it's generally less expensive than what you would pay your own house cleaner. And transportation, I put that in here. It's quite interesting. Many people will start with a car. You don't want to get rid of your car, but we see more and more after a year or two in a retirement home. Many residences are getting rid of their car. Why change the tires? Why do the maintenance? Why get the insurance when there's shuttle services? There's lots of stuff happening at the retirement home. So we're seeing some car savings as well. All right, now we're switching gears to public. Okay. Want everyone to understand the only public residences in Quebec are nursing homes. Okay, there's no such thing as, public independent living. Okay, so nursing homes are CHSLDs, as mentioned, Centre d'hébergement de soins de longue durée, or ressources intermédiaires. That's just a public residence slightly below the care levels of the CHSLD. So those are the two types available in the public system. It's considered long-term care, usually more than 3 hours of daily care. Okay, this is public now. In order to get into a public residence, none of us have a choice in the matter. We have to go through our local CLSC and we get a full evaluation. It's hard to get an evaluation. So if you're already getting some CLSC services, fantastic. Tap into your social worker, see if you can get an evaluation to see if you or your loved one, most of the time it's your loved one, can qualify for a public residence. Okay, and they're going to do that evaluation. One misnomer is that admissions into public residences are based on priority. It's not based on first come, first serve. And I guess I understand as a Quebec citizen that makes sense. A 96-year-old woman, full-blown Alzheimer's, living in an apartment on her own versus an 80-year-old person who is not so bad, has someone living with him. Well, guess who's going to have the priority? Okay, so I understand that. It doesn't make it easier for that 80-year-old, but obviously the 96-year-old in this case should have priority. Long waiting lists to get into public residences can vary between 1 and 3 years these days in Quebec, in the Montreal area. I put good care in here because, we saw some atrocities in the pandemic. And to this day, there's still a stigma. You hear the word residence and there's almost PTSD. You get nervous. But I will say, is it perfect? No, far from it in a public CHSLD. However, if I compare pre-pandemic to today, things are much better. Okay, so is it the Ritz-Carlton? No, not at all. We've got some work to do. But I just want to be able to assure. I've had someone on my show, we were talking about transitioning their dad into a CHSLD and they're very nervous. And they said, Matt, I was pleasantly surprised. I was thinking the worst and pleasantly surprised. So you will get good care. The staff to resident ratio in CHSLDs are higher than any other residences. Here are the costs today in Quebec for an individual room. This is a private room with your own private bathroom. It will cost $2,198.10. That's anywhere in the province. Okay, that's what your cost would be. By the way, just so you're interested, for your own knowledge, the cost to taxpayers for an individual room is approximately $9,000. That's what it costs to run a CHSLD. Each room is around 9,000. I'm ballparking it. So basically, the taxpayers are subsidizing about $7,000 for every room. Now, there's some that have two beds in a room. The cost goes down a little lower, and the cost goes lower with three beds or more. However, that is not popular now, three beds or more. The government has really tried to cap it at two in a room since the pandemic. So there are some that will have, three or four, but not that many anymore. It's usually going to be individual or semi-private. All right. Well, that's the end of the presentation. I threw a lot of information out there. And Alexandra, I guess I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Del Vecchio, for a topic that is really of interest to everyone, and hopefully other provinces will follow.
Interesting you say that because I could tell you right now there's a huge advocacy group on Ontario, and what they're doing is saying, why can't you take the Quebec model? That's what they're doing to Premier 4. And so look what they're doing in Quebec. So although we knock our system and it's not perfect and we got a lot of ways to improve, we do some things right. So kudos to the government for that at least. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.